In the Shadow of the Valley by Maggot Moshpit. Chapter 22. Tezar secluded herself in the back of the ship, away from anybody, her mind racing. It was too late now. She was committed. Kill or be killed. If Zip had to die to get her revenge, so be it. Still, she couldn't stop tears from forming in her eyes. And they weren't for show. Zik and Zip sat not too near, watching. Both had cold eyes.
She looks genuinely devastated,
Zik said. Zip quickly wiped his eye.
Indeed.
Zik glanced over. He put his arm around Zip and squeezed his shoulder.
Brother, we need to be strong. I know we are missing a part of us, but we can survive.
Zip nodded.
You are right. Look, she's asleep, I think. We'll finish this tomorrow, Zif. Dream not of the dead. Dream not of the dead.
Kethresh opened her eyes. The early morning was cold, but the combined heat of everyone crammed in close quarters kept the cold at bay. Kethresh was not concerned about the temperature, however. She stood up and flinched, sucking in air sharply.
Damn.
She rubbed her sore neck, then looked around. No one else was awake. She slowly strolled the ship, feeling the emptiness in her stomach.
Pill?
He was nowhere to be found. She scratched her arm, afraid the images from a few seconds ago would disappear.
Pill!
A few people nearby snorted at the noise, and she moved on before she disturbed anybody. Eventually, she reached the forward end of the ship, wanting to get another look at the rock that stuck through their vessel. She was surprised to find Pill sleeping against it, his limbs splayed in comical positions. Kethresh bent down and shook his arm. He flew awake.
What? Breakfast already?
Kethresh clamped his muzzle shut and shushed him.
No, be quiet. I need to talk to you.
How will you talk to me if I keep quiet?
Kethresh sat down and growled at him.
You know what I mean. People are trying to sleep.
Pill blinked a few times.
Oh, sorry. What is it? Did you think about what I said?
Well, I had a vision just then, while I slept. I don't know what to think now.
Describe the dream.
Kethresh shook her head.
No, it was a vision. It felt like I was actually there.
Let's not split hairs. Go on with the dream.
Slightly annoyed, she continued.
It was very strange. It was in a field with,
With your feline friend.
Yeah.
Kethresh had never been a shy person, but she rarely spoke about intimate things such as this. She had trouble describing the dream vision.
But we weren't people? I really have no idea how to describe it to you. Light! We were dots of light on a plane, and we just existed for a long time.
Pill shrugged.
I really have no experiences with dreams.
But
what?
Kethresh sought words for a minute as Pill waited patiently. Eventually she sighed.
Your argument may have merit.
Pill flopped back down contently.
I see.
Well, I don't know. It's not easy to swallow, you know. I can't swallow everything I've done.
Pill raised his head.
I was avoiding bringing that up. War is war, my friend.
She wiped her face and turned around, leaving Pill behind and seeking a spot to be alone. The morning mist obscured the distance, but Marten could still see the low cliff and the beach. The place was deserted. There was no way to lower the boarding ramp, so Petal had shown him where to find a rope ladder. Now a good 50 people waited to disembark, all intent on finding food. Marten sat next to Beale, waiting until everyone was off the boat to get off themselves. Marten had a thought.
So, what are you planning on doing? Don't you want to go home?
Beale scoffed.
Not in this life. I'm homeless. We all are. You ask any person here and they'll say the same.
That's a rather broad statement.
It's true. We've been together as a crew for a long time. That Garthel is the exception, of course. He was a replacement.
Marten didn't pry. He simply nodded. There was a clear opportunity here, seemingly dropped into his lap. Maybe Pill intended this to happen, thus fulfilling his promise. Even as Marten opened his mouth, something tugged on his insides.
I have a proposition for you and the others.
Oh?
Have you ever heard of Frostblight?
I've been there. When I was a kid.
I was a blacksmith there before I escaped. That's who's chasing us. Soldiers from Frostblight.
Yes, I know. That big fellow told us.
Marten clasped his paws together.
I'm looking to liberate it from the felines. Our feline friend Pill.
Beale cut Marten off and grabbed his arm suddenly.
About Pill. Can we trust him? He seems shifty if you ask me.
Marten momentarily had no words. He shook his head.
He's brought his weapon on board for us. He's helped us escape. He can be trusted. I'm sure.
Beale looked back towards the island.
Marten, I can tell you're an old man.
Marten flushed red as Beale continued.
But I'm a bit older, and I've been all over Atria. And do you know the one thing that seems to remain totally consistent?
Marten knew, but he let Beale finish.
Felines are evil. You can't trust even the ones that think they're good.
Beale, I've been fighting with myself about that. I'm not sure that's true. I mean...
You won't have our help with Pill here. I'll tolerate his presence. But if we get off this island and make landfall, and Pill is still aboard, we will be marching in different directions, you and I.
Without another word, Beale mounted the ladder and climbed down. Marten was thankful his tail wasn't long enough to fall between his legs. He stood there for a moment, mulling things over.
You're not just going to...
Don't sneak up on me like that.
Sorry. I heard your conversation, though. Letting him get away with it?
I'll think of something. It's hard to change someone's mind who's had it stuck for so long.
Petal nodded.
True.
Rita stood, paws akimbo, looking down at Garth. Harimau stood nearby. She yanked his chain, and he came awake jarringly.
Gosh. Oh, it's morning?
Yes, we're disembarking. So we came to get you. Come on.
Harimau undid his chains and hauled him to his feet.
No one left behind.
He stumbled as he got his legs back. He noticed Rita walked awkwardly and sometimes flinched when she moved.
Are you all right?
Just fine.
They flanked him and led him upstairs. By then, everyone else was on the island, and the three could see them slowly moving around the top of the low cliff and the beach, a few dotting the shrubbery on the distant hills. Rita stepped up to the ladder and climbed on, but as she bent to take a step down, she cried out in pain and slipped. Both Harimau and Garth lunged forward, but it wasn't necessary. She deftly caught herself on the ladder, swinging slightly.
Rita, are you all right?
Just fine.
She descended cautiously. Harimau gestured to the ladder.
Ladies first.
Good one, scavenger.
Harimau growled at him, and the little fox sped down the ladder. They walked towards the cliff at Rita's pace. If it was up to Harimau, Garth would stay behind and starve, but Rita wanted him along. Why, Harimau couldn't figure. Nevertheless, he went along with it. They spotted Bronze near the cliff face. He was digging in the ground with his paws. As they approached, he turned around and smiled.
Look what I've found!
He held up a root vegetable.
Sand carrots!
He shoved one into his mouth and chewed happily, then tossed them one each. Rita munched half-heartedly while Garth made a face.
I don't like sand carrots. They're covered in sand. It's disgusting.
Harimau was glad for something to eat.
Tastes fine. Quit complaining.
A shout from above caused Bronze to look up and scramble back as a giant bough fell from the cliff. Marten poked his head from the top.
Look! Full of fruit! There's whole groves of that stuff. We're cutting off the branches to stock the ship. I doubt anyone will miss them.
Bronze picked one of the large purple fruit. He peeled it and dug out some of the flesh.
Perfectly ripe. Here, have some.
He gestured to the branch. The three descended upon it with vigor. Kethresh roamed the low hills with a couple of the liberated slaves. They chatted non-stop to each other. One, a ferret named Civvy, was in the middle of a tale of the high seas.
So there I was, surrounded on all sides by felines. Our crew fought violently, and we almost slew the whole lot, but, alas, the reinforcements arrived, and took me and a few others prisoner.
The other, the ferret's mate Cull, laughed.
I swear, it gets more extravagant each time you tell it. But this tale, Kithresh, is totally true.
Kithresh dropped to the ground and motioned the other two to follow suit. Cull looked around nervously.
What? What is it?
Shh, I said. I hear Laxar.
Civy's stomach growled.
You don't say.
Kithresh drew her weapon.
Go back to the ship and bring bows, arrows, and anyone who can shoot.
Civvy and Cull looked at each other and scampered back towards the ship. Kithresh dropped to her belly and crawled a short ways to the top of the hill. The snow sat under the grass, and she slid noiselessly along the ground. From her perch, she could see them down below, a whole herd of them, grazing lazily in a group. They numbered in the scores. Kithresh grinned. She was partial to Laxar meat. One of the regent's higher-ranking lackeys strolled casually into the smithy. He was in charge of investigating crime, and he smelled arson. He walked right up to Halen and Devon.
Lamp oil's missing?
Yes, and...
Shush! I'm trying to think.
He stood there, tapping his foot for a moment.
This is connected to the fire last night, I know it. You, Halen, where were you last night, right before the fire?
I was here, working. You don't think...
No, I was just covering all possibilities. I will now question your staff.
He grilled Devon similarly, then moved on to the rest of the smiths. Halen gave him a look.
Interesting fellow.
Do you think someone stole the oil and burned the warehouse?
Perhaps. Who would burn the warehouse, though? There wasn't much in there that burned.
Maybe it was a statement or something like that. You know, from a rebellion.
Halen laughed and patted Devon on the back heartily.
You read too many adventure stories. The fire very well might have been an accident.
Devon wasn't convinced. He walked back to his work, dreaming of glorious rebellion against the felines. Once the investigator had ruled out everyone in the smithy and hauled a few off for more thorough questioning, Halen picked up his things and headed home. He ate dinner, kissed his mate goodnight, and went into the living room to read. Once the snores of Tozhenka could be heard, he stood, silently stealing out of the room and into the cellar. He emerged with a jar of oil and went out into the night. Stumbling, scraping, and scratching, the little cub rushed from the hills once more. The strangers had moved onto the land, and so he figured it was about time he should tell someone. He rushed through the fields of carefully cultivated plants, scrambling over low stone walls and eventually arriving at a small village. He rushed directly into the largest house. It was massive, domed, and made of clay. The roof smoked. The cub stumbled through the fuzzy leather drape that served as a door and slammed into someone's leg.
Oh, little one, what trouble are you in now?
The cub tried to get away, but the woman he had run into scooped him into her arms.
Let go! I need to talk to Elder Laurel. There's strange people in the hills.
The woman laughed and patted the little one on the head.
Oh, is that so? I suppose they've come to ransack our food and kidnap our maidens.
The cub squirmed out of her grasp and hit the ground running on all fours.
Hey, little Yez, get back here. Don't bother Elder Laurel with your childish games.
He scurried under tables and between feet, evading the motherly woman and slipping into the elder's room. The elder was indeed just that, elderly. He sat tiredly upon a wooden throne as he read a book. He lifted his tired eyes ever so slightly and wheezed.
Child, why do you rush in here so urgently?
Yez tripped and sprawled on the moss-covered floor, the woman running in after.
I'm sorry, Elder. Yez got a little too excited.
Elder, there's strangers taking our fruit and hunting our loxar. There's maybe 100 or more.
Child, there are no other people here. It's just us.
They came out of a giant with my own 2 eyes!
The elder's smile faltered, and he hauled himself into a sitting position.
Is that so? Describe it to me, please.
The woman decided to humor both the child and the elder, and heaved a heavy sigh as she walked from the room. Yez waved his little arms around excitedly.
It was huge! It floated on the water, almost like a leaf, or one of our rafts. But it was much, much bigger! It had trees growing out of it, too!
The elder stood and hobbled towards the door.
We must see this. Flossu!
A burly man poked his head in.
Yes?
Gather the farmers. We must go to the fields at once. We have guests, it seems.
Guests?
The elder tapped the burly man with his walking stick on his way out of the room.
Yes, guests. And we, being hosts, must show the proper hospitality.
When Zik awoke that morning, he felt sick. There had always been a sort of connection to his brothers that he felt constantly, even over great distances. Now, with one connection severed, he felt like half a man. As far as he was concerned, he was only half a man now. And when he met Zif that morning, he knew his brother felt the same way. They ate breakfast at the table, one chair empty, like the voids in their hearts. As soon as they finished, they went to find Tezar. Tezar, oddly enough, had no dreams that night. She suspected it had something to do with her lack of sustained sleep. Nevertheless, she was up early and readying for duty along with the rest of the men and women. She emerged from below decks to a clear morning. One sun shone from the horizon, and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. Some of the crew chattered in relief as they readied the sails for departure. It was a hopeful sight for sore eyes, to be sure, but now they were lost with only one mast, and the other ship was nowhere to be seen. Tezar turned to look for the wheelman.
Tanner, get in the cabin and get a bearing. We need to know where the hell we are.
Tanner nodded quickly and scurried into the cabin. Tezar stepped to the forward end of the ship and thoroughly scanned the horizon, looking for any sign of land. She hadn't finished her search before an iron grip clasped her shoulder. She was whirled around and found herself uncomfortably close to the faces of Zik and Zif.
We need a word. Come with us.
Of course. What's this about?
Zip.
Tezar gulped, following the two wordlessly to the armory, an odd choice of venue. Zif stood in front of the door, while Zik sat on the bench.
The night watchman remembered a detail he didn't mention earlier.
He did? What was it?
He heard some of what you two were talking about.
Time slowed, and Tezar's mind raced. It was impossible that the night watchman was able to hear their conversation from where he was, and if he had, he would have raised some sort of alarm, depending on what he heard. She sensed that Zik and Zif were bluffing. There was a very good chance the guard didn't have a clue. Then again, what aroused their suspicions? Either way, it wasn't safe to lie outright. Tezar sighed and slumped onto the bench next to Zik.
Well, we were arguing, actually, about Okara.
Zik raised an eyebrow.
Oh, do you mind telling me what about?
Tezar's cunning was never her best strength, but necessity bred creativity, and she spun a tale in her mind.
I want to be the one to kill Marten.
Zik blinked a few times, somewhat confused.
I'm sure if you ask the Regent.
No! In hand-to-hand combat, the moment I lay my eyes on him.
The Regent wanted a public execution. You will be demoted to a scullery maid.
That's what Zip said. But I don't care. I want revenge. We argued for a while and then left.
No one spoke further. Zik felt deflated now. Zif looked at his feet. Tezar stood and wiped away an imaginary tear.
Can we just focus on finding where we are? I really don't want to dwell on what happened.
Zif and Zik looked at each other, not wanting to be done. Tezar left them alone and returned to scanning the horizon. She looked up at the wheelman as he poked his head out of a little hole in the cabin roof and fiddled with some instruments. He then jumped slightly, and his head disappeared. Seconds later, he was charging Tezar down. Ziff joined Zik on the bench.
It's difficult to take revenge on the sea. Aye, but you know what the texts say about this. Aye, then let's not waste energy here. I have no more energy, Ziff. Aye, me neither.
There was a cry from outside. The wheelman was giving his report.
Land! There's land there, miss!
Zik and Ziff exchanged a glance of mutual understanding, then hauled themselves to their feet.